What's up guys, this is Ben from RadTech, and today is video number 13 of our PC building series. We've built our computer, we have our peripherals, and it's time to look into monitors. Shout out to all of you who made it through last week's video. That one was a long one, and I apologize for the length, but we had a lot to cover, and today will be a lot quicker. Today we're talking about video cables and monitors. Most of the graphics cards that you guys will be using will probably not have too much older connections on it. If we go way back, we can find RCA cables. RCA cables can transport audio and video depending on which one you plug in. Yellow is typically used for video, whereas red and white are typically used for right and left stereo audio, respectively. RCA cables aren't typically used anymore. They used to be used mostly with TVs. The GameCube, for example, used RCA to connect to the TV. If we stay back in time, we'll also find VGA cables. VGA cables are so old that I couldn't even find one around my house, and yet for some reason some laptops and projectors still have VGA connections on them. VGA maxes out at 720p, which is officially HD, but these days 720 HD doesn't really look very high definition in comparison to the higher resolutions that we have today. Continuing forward, after VGA we have DVI. DVI was able to bring full HD 1080p resolution through its cables. While keeping the similar screw-in design that VGA had, it had quite a big clunky connection. It was only quite recently that graphics card companies started to drop DVI. My GTX 1070 actually has one DVI port on it. Next we have HDMI. Almost everyone who's plugged in something video-wise in the last few years probably knows what HDMI is. The connector itself has a quite easily identifiable design, looking like an enlarged micro USB connection. Most graphics cards and monitors that you'll be able to find these days will probably have HDMI on it. One bonus to using HDMI is how widely spread it is. It seems like everything that outputs or inputs video these days can use HDMI. Even the camera that I'm using to record this video uses a miniature version of HDMI. Since there's so many things that use HDMI, there's a lot of accessories that you can get. If you wanted to have multiple displays showing the exact same thing, you could output one HDMI source from your computer into a box like this, which splits one HDMI source into 3. This can, however, output multiple different displays showing different things. If you have a long run of HDMI to do, but only a few short cables, you could also get an HDMI repeater like this, which can extend the reach of your HDMI cables. You can also get adapters like this that go from HDMI to another video source like Thunderbolt 2 that I use for my MacBook Pro. And then finally we have Displayport. Displayport is what I like to use because it can handle 4K resolution at high frame rates. I have this monitor here, which is a 28-inch 4K display. Using Displayport on this monitor means that I can get 4K display with high frame rate. Another bonus to using HDMI is that you'll be able to use capture cards like this from Elgato. Capture cards like this external one, or the internal ones that you can get, are great for streamers, so let me know in the comment section below if you want me to make a video on everything you need to start a streaming setup. And now we're into monitors. When buying a monitor, the first thing you want to think about is the space that you have. Displays come in different sizes, so that's the first thing you should keep in mind. For comparison, here I have a 28-inch monitor versus a 21-inch monitor. These measurements are measured the same as TVs, from one corner to another. Obviously, if you have less space, you won't be able to get such a big monitor, but you might be able to use one or a few smaller monitors. Another thing to keep in mind when you're looking at monitors is how you're going to set them up. Almost every monitor will come with a base, and those are totally fine to use. But another way that you can mount your monitors is using a VESA Mount. Most monitors will come with 4 screw holes exactly the same distance apart on every monitor, and this is a standard called the VESA Mount, VESA. These 4 screw holes make the monitor able to be screwed into third-party mounts. You can get mounts that screw directly into a wall, or you can get mounts that screw into or clamp around the desk. Next thing you should think about is the resolution. The standard these days for resolutions is 1080p. But that number is becoming fairly low in terms of resolution because of the amount of newer 4K displays. Apple also just came out with their 5K display, so that makes 1080p look even smaller. 4K displays are great if you like playing super crisp looking games, watching the highest resolution movies that you have, or for photographers or some graphic designers if you like to see every little detail right in front of you. If you feel like you like the best of both worlds, but you don't need the extremes of either one, then a 1440p monitor may be for you. Since the height resolution of a 4K monitor is 2160, and the height of a 1080p monitor is 1080, 1440 is almost right in between those two. One benefit of having a 1440p monitor is that currently they can have higher frame rates than what 4K displays have. Speaking of hertz and frame rates, that's the next thing you should look at. If you have games that can support super high frame rates like 120 frames per second, you'll probably want to look into having a monitor that has the same amount of hertz as you play with frame rates. Hertz is the refresh rate, and the refresh rate is the amount of time it takes for the screen to go from one frame to the next. This is why 60 Hz monitors are great for playing 60 frames per second games, because 60 Hz means that it refreshes the screen 60 times per second. So if you have 60 frames per second coming out from the computer, the monitor will be able to refresh the screen once for every frame. One thing to keep in mind though is that that's not always perfect, and there may be some screen tearing. And that's why AMD and NVIDIA have come out with both of their sync technologies. AMD has FreeSync, NVIDIA has G-Sync. I made the mistake of getting a monitor with AMD's FreeSync, even though I have a GTX 1070 made by NVIDIA. This hasn't made much of a difference for me personally because I have yet to notice any screen tearing in any of the games that I play. But what these syncing technologies do is that they provide a link of communication between the monitor and the graphics card so that they can both match up their refresh rate for every frame per second. The last thing you want to think about is the cable you're using. If you're going to be streaming and using a capture card, then HDMI may be best for you. But if you're going to be playing games at the ultra highest settings, then Displayport may be for you. And not every monitor has both HDMI and Displayport. So you're going to want to think about which one is best for you, and then find a monitor that has that connection. Now after considering all these things, you may feel like you're ready to go out and buy a monitor from Amazon or Best Buy. What I would suggest is that you take this knowledge and go to your local computer shop or your local Best Buy and actually test out some of the monitors and see for yourself which one looks best for you. Because a bunch of numbers and some letters like HDMI and Displayport, those will help you find a monitor that you like. But seeing it in person will give you the best idea as what is perfect for you. And you're probably going to be looking at this monitor for quite a long time, so you'll want something that looks good and works well. So that's it for the PC building series. Thanks for coming along this journey with me, and I hope I helped you out. If you did find this series helpful, feel free to support me by subscribing, liking, and comment down below if you have any other ideas for series that I can do similar to this one. Feel free to also add a comment if I've forgotten anything throughout this whole series, because I'd love to hear from you and maybe make a further video on anything I missed. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for next week's video. See you next week. Peace.